It's vegan recipes with Pat and
Welcome to
Emily.
my kitchen. Today on It's Vegan, I'm going to show you ways to preserve apples. What I'm working with right now are Cortland apples, and I'm going to freeze them by slicing them, and those would be for apple pies, apple crisps, those type of things. And then I'm also going to make some applesauce that will actually have the peel on. Most people will take the peel off, but I want to show you this technique because you might like it, especially if you're looking to have whole foods. When we're freezing it, we can use freezer bags. You could use plastic containers. I normally don't use the plastic containers because you can't get all the air out of it. And I'm also going to show you how you could do it if you had a food saver. So stay tuned. I'm ready to slice and peel these apples. My apple peeler has a suction, and I like to do this at my sink because it's juicy and kind of messy. So I'm going to do the suction. These apples are Cortland apples, and they may be a little bit large for this peeler. Something else before I forget that I wanted to mention: when you're working with apples and other fruit and you're processing it, you get these little fruit flies, and a natural way to attract them and get rid of them is you put some cider vinegar in a little container with some dish detergent, and when you put that together, that cider vinegar attracts them and they end up drowning in there. I'll take these peeled parts off later, but look how much fun. These are great things to give to kids. Just a tiny bit to get it started, just a little bit. Once it gets started, you can let go. Hey, do you want to pull it back? Oh, I use this. Oh, you got it off. Good for you. And as Emily has said in other videos, it's fun for kids to get involved with cooking. I'll catch the apple. Okay. Good job, Isaac.
We're putting this on YouTube.
We are.
This one?
We'll be putting this one on YouTube, yeah. You'll be on
And the
TV.
other one?
Yeah.
Can I do it?
Yeah, you can try.
You're shy.
Yeah, they're sharp. Okay. And I just push this a tiny bit. There you go. You got it going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, you want to pull that off and put it back there? Yeah. Slipped off. Here, I'll get it. It's really pretty slippery. You want to do another one? You gotta find one that's not too big. Those really big ones we're going to save for applesauce. These ones are for pies and apple crisp. There you go. Yep, it's got it. Good job. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, you got it. Thank you, boys. I have peeled a lot of the apples, and now I'm going to get ready to bag them. I don't even put these in lemon juice, and that little bit of peel I'm going to leave on. If you're real picky, you might want to take it off. And then I will be slicing them. And in my bags, I'm going to put about 8 cups of apples. That normally will make a pie for me, or if I'm making an apple crisp. Now, see, I'm going here, I'm taking off the parts that I'm not going to want to eat. And again, I'm not going to use lemon juice on these, although because these would be fun for kids to have in their lunch, I would put lemon juice on that. Now, this is a little more peeled than I would want in my apple pie. But the reason I'm not using lemon juice for the ones that are going to get baked is they're going to turn brown no matter what. This is a little more peel than I would like. I'm just going to put it aside. I'll probably end up eating that as a snack. Or if you want to dehydrate your apples, those would be good pieces to dehydrate. Cortlands are a great cooking apple. They cook quickly and they're pretty sweet. I'm going to show you using the food saver. So I've put 8 cups of apples in here, and one thing you'll find if you're using a food saver and you're sucking the air out of it, it's going to draw liquid up and it will prevent it from sealing. So I put a little piece of paper towel there. You could use fabric to help absorb that. Sounds like it's going to take off. Okay, so you can see we have a nice strong seal there. There's absolutely no air in those apples. Now I'm just going to use a regular gallon-sized freezer bag. I'm going to flatten them down a little bit, and then I'm going to try to get as much of the air out of this bag as I can. And I'll first start by zipping some of that shut, and now I'm trying to pull it out. If you're really picky, you can put a straw in there and draw some out, but these seem to work just fine for me. I'm ready to make my applesauce. Remember, this is the one that will have the peels on it. I will show you how I slice them. There's a couple ways that you can do it. This is probably the way that I'm mainly going to do it, and then these will go in my pot. And watch for pieces that you would not want to eat. Take those off. Don't process anything that you won't want to eat fresh. Another method that you might use is one of these corers. You have to make sure that your apple is not larger than the circumference. And this is a pretty nice quick way. Put that in my compost pile. You still have to look at these though. What I've noticed is there's several pieces that are a little rotted, so I'm not going to use those for in my applesauce. I will be back after I have all of these apples finished. I have removed the core from all of my apples. I put them in a big pot that has a heavy bottom. I'm going to add about 1 cup of water. I want to add as little water as possible to this because of the way I'm making the applesauce. This was what was left when I was slicing the apples to put in the freezer. It still had enough apple on it, but too much skin for pies. So I'll put the lid on, I'll bring it up to a boil, and I'll be simmering this until it gets very, very mushy. Also, I wanted to show you, out of a bushel of apples, this is how much stuff, the skins, the seeds that I got for my compost pile. Now, while my apples are cooking and getting extremely soft, I'm going to wash my jars. I will be using 2 sizes today. I'll be using a 1/2 cup and a 1 cup size. The 1/2 cup is what I use for when I'm substituting applesauce for oil. Most of my recipes call for 1/2 cup. And then this size, I want to differentiate my applesauce with the peels in from my applesauce without the peels. And we'll be making applesauce without the peels a little bit later in the video. So as I'm getting ready for my water bath, I'm putting down metal trivets, and then I'll fill this with water. I'll put my jars in here and sterilize them. I also want to say, you don't have to buy special equipment. If you don't have a metal trivet or you don't have a canner like this, you can also just use another pot and put a towel in the bottom. If the glass jars are touching directly on the bottom of the pot, they're likely to crack. The apples are cooked. I'm going to pour them into my high-speed blender. As you can see, it still has the skins on. They've cooked down nicely. I'm placing it on the blender base, and at this point you will have to be very, very careful because this is such a hot mixture. So I'm going to start on a low power first. If there's too much steam building up, I'll open this lid and then let some of that steam escape. Okay, I'm going to let some out, just trying to be extra cautious here. I'm going to let a little more steam out. Steam escape. It's really hot in there. And I'm going to give it one more blend and then put it in my jars. Let the steam steam escape before you take the lid off so you don't get burnt. I'm looking at it and I want it blended up a little bit more. Let the steam escape, do the release. Okay, that's more like what I have in mind. Now it's time to fill the jars. Remember, these are my ½ cup size that I use in place of oil in muffins and cakes and that type of thing. You always want to leave a good ½ inch space at the top of the jar. When these jars are processing, they expand a little bit, and that's why you're leaving that head space. The next step is you will clean the tops of the jars to make sure no applesauce got on them, and that will ensure that you're getting a good seal when you're processing these. This one looks a tiny bit low, and so does this one. I wanted you to see just how smooth that applesauce can be. The Cortland apples do a beautiful job of that. It's very, very smooth. Now these lids, they're brand new. You don't reuse those year after year. And they've been in hot, hot water so that the rubber part of the band gets softened. Now we're putting on the metal bands. The jars are hot, so be careful. I'll continue this process until all of the applesauce is used up, and I'll be putting them in a water bath. First batch is out, and I have them on a cooling rack because I like to get some air circulation around them. It seems like that helps the sealing process. If you just heard that pop, that to me is one of my favorite sounds of canning season. All of the applesauce has sealed. I'm going to remove the bands, then I'm going to wash them to make sure that none of the applesauce leaked out during the sealing process. Then I will be rinsing them, and lastly I will label them. I'm wrapping up this portion of preserving apples. What I did was I worked with 1 bushel of Cortland apples. What I got from that was 11 8-cup bags of sliced apples for the freezer. I got 10 1-cup jars and 24 ½ jars of applesauce made with the peel and with no sugar. Good morning. We are getting ready to go to a mud race this morning. It's a 5K, and what I wanted to do was process these apples because I am making applesauce and apple butter without the skins. I'm going to show you that process. One thing I want to tell you is if you want chunky applesauce, you're going to peel them and cook them like this with as little water as possible. Also, when you're canning, for this portion of it, you don't need any special equipment. That you could use just a regular pot. You could use an electric pressure cooker, or you could use a regular stovetop pressure cooker. With these, I fill them 3/4 full, add a ½ cup of water, and pressure cook them for 6 minutes. All is an old-fashioned roaster that is awful in appearance, but it will cook a big batch of apples. Now the apples that I have right here, you can see they are mixed sizes. I bought them at Shram's, the local food market, and they were on the reduced table, so there'll be a variety of different apples. And these apples, you might think, oh, these don't look so good. These have not been sprayed. Ming grew them and gave them to Emily as a gift. As I'm chopping up these apples, you will see that these are actually fine. Okay, this was one of the apples that looked so great. It wasn't sprayed. It's not quite as nice. So I'm taking off the part that I'm thinking is not quite as nice. This was one of the sprayed apples, and you can actually leave that stem on there. I tend to take it off. But the food mill that we're going to put it through is going to take off the skin and remove the seeds. This is exactly how I'm going to put them in my pot. Some people put the whole apple in the pot when you're using a food mill, but I just want to make sure I don't have any buggy parts, so I like to cut them open a little bit. I'll be filling up my roaster, and after the mud run, we will be finishing our applesauce and turning it into apple butter.
We all made it through the terrain race, back to cooking apples.
Something that I noticed this year that happened was that my apples were really juicy, and I like thick applesauce, and I also don't want to take all that time to cook it out. So what I did, and I have never done this before, was I put the apples through a strainer before I'm putting them into my squeezo. And this is going to be amazing, but so far today I've already gotten a quart of juice, and I'm going to turn that into an apple jelly. It will not be one of those clear apple jellies, but it will be opaque. It would make a great glaze, or you could just use it as jelly. So we're going to continue on squeezing the apples.
This is using the squeezo in action. We have filled the top with apples. There's a plunger that you use. You get a different angle so you can see it coming out of the side. And then also out of the very end is where the waste apple parts come out. The skin, the peel, the seeds, the stems, all get separated out.
Making all of the applesauce at one time because it was a different variety of apples. Some of them were cooking, some of them were eating apples. So we'll make a big pot of applesauce, mix it all up. We'll taste it and determine if we want to add sugar or not. And then we'll just start the canning process that we showed in the previous portion of this video.
It smells great in here. Appley baked deliciousness. I think kids always have fun with these squeezos.
They do.
It does go faster using a squeezo than a food mill, if you've ever done either.
We have 36 cups of applesauce, and we decided we're going to turn the applesauce into apple butter before we can the actual applesauce, because the apple butter has to cook down and get nice and thick. So what I'm going to do is add all of the spices that go in there, and look at that. That is a lot of spices. There's cinnamon, ginger, cloves, allspice, and a dash of salt. Now the amount of sugar is incredible, but keep in mind this is like a jelly. It's not a main dish or a dessert. So there's white sugar. We'll put the recipe at the bottom. And then I have dark brown sugar. I'm going to recommend that you use an oversized pot for this because it's going to get bubbly and you're not going to want to clean this off of your stove. Other ways that you can cook down your applesauce into apple butter is using crock pots, or you can even roast it in your oven until it's the thickness that you want. When you go to can it, you want this to be bubbly hot. You want your sterilized jars, and you're going to want to process it in a water bath for 10 minutes.
I just wanted to add that if you have a thicker pot to use for this, I would go ahead and get it because you definitely do not want your bottom to burn.
It's going to take a minute or two to stir it all in.
It's a huge pot.
You can see I'm still getting clumps of sugar. Already smells great.
Definitely.
This is going to be, yeah, the spices. This is going to become dark brown when it's finished cooking, and it will get thicker. We want to cook some of that liquid off. If you have small children around, when this starts bubbling, please caution them to how hot it is. We'll be back when it's finished. The apple butter has been cooking about an hour, and because the applesauce was so thick when we started it, it didn't cook down, and I needed to add more sugar and spices so it had the flavor that we're used to. But this is about what it's going to look like when it's done. kind of holds a shape a tiny bit. Keep in mind when you serve this chilled, it's going to be a lot thicker than this. So we're going to put it in the jars and process it.
Up next, the funny stuff.
Whoops. That does happen. Okay, continue on. Yes.
I got one.
I don't know if it's going to work, but you can try it.
Man, look.
Are you videotaping all this? Oh, okay. Okay, stop. One thing nice